Alright, today in this video we're going to be breaking down a 13 Cinderbrew Meadery that my group was able to get done last night. So we're about halfway through week 2. In this run I'm going to be talking about everything we did right, everything that we did wrong, and general strategy and routing. Now this is a very linear dungeon, but if you want to look at my talents there, they are here. I am playing something a little different than I usually do, but I am still playing Shado-pan. I don't know why I said that so weird. Anyways, we're now going to slot the key. So one thing you'll notice right off the bat is we aren't playing with a lust class, so we are having to use drums. Drums are very much less effective. They are only 15% haste instead of 30. But outside of that, we are looking pretty zug. First big pull is always, first pull is always going to be big. We try to really utilize the cooldowns of the Arms Warrior here. They are the only really true uncapped class we have in the comp. In this first pull, the main target is going to be the Hired Muscle. You're not going to probably have an easy time seeing him in this pull, mainly because I'm also not targeting him. But that is the target that we want to go down immediately. Now, for Brewmasters, what I'm doing is I'm starting with Dampen Harm, then I'm chaining it into Fortifying Brew, and then during this time I'm using Celestial Brew along with Celestial Brew Reset on Black Ox Brew to make sure that I'm staying alive. I do require a lot of healing from the healer, so if you are going to pull this big, your healer better know that they need to keep you up. As you can see, I start to go down here. I don't know how our Fury Warrior died exactly, though he did, his health did hit 0, so that's a problem. I don't know if that was just debuffs or a cast or whatever, but anyways, very scary first pull. My trinket does end up coming back up though. I am running Ringing Ritual Mud, which is a very strong trinket in this dungeon because these mean mug casts, unless you dodge them, they apply a pretty nasty bleed. And this dot effect is going to give you cooldown reduction. So it's a trinket that you can utilize roughly every minute in this first part of the dungeon, as long as the bleeds are actually going on you, as well as the volatile keg. This next pull we're trying to keep relatively small because I'm out of CDs, and you only ever want to pull one hired muscle at a time, and you never want to pull a hired muscle with Chewy, who is the patrolling mini-boss. Once this muscle goes down, we're going to be able to chain into Chewy, who's in the left-hand corner of the screen there. He's fairly easy to deal with, though he does do a very important mechanic called Tenderize, which knocks players back. Now, I tried to ring a piece there, but I forgot when Chewy's in combat with any other mob, he makes them immune to CC and kicks. So that's why you don't really want to pull much else with him. What I am trying to do, though, is I am trying to chain in a handful of mobs that won't be dangerous to deal with. High Stakes just has us dodging. It's not a big deal. And now this is a pull that I'm going to actually wait for a lot of my cooldowns to come up again, because we're going to be able to do another big pull after this. Notice how my group is all positioned on the right side of the room as well. This is so we're not getting knocked back into another pack, because if that happens, you're probably going to wipe. At least at this level. If you're in a lower key, you can maybe recover it depending on your healer or your damage. But this Tenderize cast is normally where things go wrong. Not only is it a good burst of damage, but getting knocked into another pack is just a big no-no. Now, one unique thing that I did here was I did paralysis out one of the pyromaniacs, so I can pull in 2 patrons. The patrons are really cool because what they do is they allow me to kind of get feedback on my trinket, my Ringing Ritual Mud, and it gives my DPS additional fodder, and then we're able to pull this pyromaniac in with another pull. So here we are, we have one more and the last hired muscle of this first boss room, and this is the scariest mob here. As you can see, it does almost lethal damage to our DPS, so it's really important that we're stopping any other tertiary damage that's going on, mostly coming out from the pyromaniac, which I have actually set focused on orange, and we're just making sure that we're kicking the boiling flames. So easy as that. Or am I crazy? Are there 2 muscles? No, there's just 1. Okay, my nameplate's just moved around a little bit. So at this point, we just have Fortifying Brew rolling back up. That's really good. And we're going to be able to use this for the last pull of the dungeon, which is great. So last pull is a couple of these little yellow guys. And then we're going to grab the patrolling attendant as well as the 3 guys sitting next to the fireplace. Now, we are going to leave that back left corner pack up. It's just a couple of patrons. We don't need them for count. I see a lot of groups clear this entire room. You don't need to. I guess if you don't trust your group to not run back there, but you never will actually end up pulling that pack. So it's nothing you really need to worry about. And after that, we're just kind of chilling. This next boss fight has a lot of spot healing requirements, so you want to make sure your healer is healthy on mana. we're in Discord together, so I just made an audible. I was like, "Are you good?" She was like, "Yep," and I was like, "All right, we're going." But if you track mana like a normal person would, just make sure your healer has like 80%. The reason why is that Throw Cinderbrew cast debuffs 2 players, and it does a ton of damage. As you can see, our rogue and our arms warrior were taking the actual dick. That's nuts. And then what we're doing is we're basically positioning this guy on the right side of the room to keep the center of the room clean of any of these like Cinderbrew puddles. And this is pretty much it. We just hug the right hand side. He phases at 66% and 33%. So the idea is that you want to try to phase him before he does throw Cinderbrew. You don't really want to phase when he does this cast. Unfortunately, we phased at like the wrong time. The reason why you don't want to phase at the wrong time is because your group is now rushing the boss and could be out of range of your healer. And there's a good burst of group damage at the start of this phase because of all the unruly patrons. And we quickly were able to satisfy their thirst, and we're back in phase 1 again. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pull them over to the right-hand side, and we're going to make our way back down that side of the room. Now, the pools disappear pretty quickly. So pulling them over here, you're going to notice as we move, the pools will start slowly disappearing behind us. So we're able to kind of move through at the same rate we did before. You can try countering the knockback as a Brewmaster monk, but it's not really a big deal. Like, you can roll and dash, but I just let him knock me back, and then I let him naturally follow me, and that will pull him away from these tornadoes. The boss kind of does all your movement for you. Now we're going back into phase 1. The way that I like to do this is the DPS go to the left-hand side. I grab the far right here. I deliver to the close guy by wiggling back and forth. And then I grab the other one, and I go to the far back right corner so my healer can focus on keeping the rest of my group alive. And then when we're phasing, I'm going to actually now meet them on the left side of the room. I generally like to pull him back to the right-hand side, like the same way that we did the first phases, but I was way out of position, so I ended up pulling him onto this side instead. There's no like benefit of really pulling him over here. The big benefit is that we're going to IPA next, so we're close to the store, but the boss isn't really that close to being dead yet, so we're going to be pushed away from that door, so it doesn't really matter where you end up positioning him. And as you can see, those patrons in the corner are just like chilling. We're never near them, so it's very, very chill. Anyways, this is going to be a pretty big pull. We're starting off with just these 4, because our Feral Druid is engineering, and she's able to grab the engineering weapon. And the engineering weapon can also be picked up by goblins, gnomes, and mechagnomes. It allows you to do a 4-second channel, and that 4-second channel does 1% of the mob's health every second for 4 seconds. And what's really weird about it is that you can like recast it mid-channel to get a second use. And we've also found a bug that if you vanish or meld while channeling, you also can get another use. So there's a way to actually get 3 full channels. Like if you're a Night Elf player, you hit it once, then you hit it again during the channel, then you meld right before it's about to end, and then you're able to use it again. And so like this combination allows us to get a lot of damage from our Druid out on this pull, since there's not a lot of group damage going on. The big focus here is just going to be like the Hobo Goblin, the Hop Goblin. His charge is a little scary when it overlaps with other mechanics, and you want to try to aim him to a close wall. But when he does charge and when he dies, he drops these droplets, and they're a little bit obnoxious to deal with, because when they die, they leave poop on the ground, and poop on the ground is never fun, especially when it slows you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to finish up this pull, because we're going to be skipping the next pack. And now skipping the next pack doesn't require a rogue, but we utilize our rogue to do it. You can do it as a monk. You can Ring of Peace and Paralysis that corner weapons tester and knock them all into the corner, and you can walk by without using stealth. You can do similar things with Sap. You can do similar things as a DH with Imprison. Basically, there's a way to skip that pack with multiple groups, but we're going to utilize the rogue there. Now, there's also a way to pull that pack and then drop a pack later, which I'll point out, but this is the route that we end up using. And so we grab this patrolling Hobgoblin pack into the next group as well. Also, in terms of defensives, I know I haven't mentioned it much since the first room. I'm basically using them as they come up, because there's just a lot of sustained group damage in this run, from dots to random like casts from the casters, from the different scientists, From the Hobgoblin damage, there's Reckless Delivery, obviously auto attacks. Like everything is kind of doing a lot of damage here. So I'm doing my best just to maintain health to let my healer keep the group alive, because there's a lot of group damage as well, as you can see from these Reckless Deliveries. And this is it. So these Hobgoblins are going to take a little bit longer to fall over than the rest of the pack. Snap Threat here is really weird. Brewmaster monks kind of struggle with it. It's kind of a reason I still like playing Shado-pan. Like Keg Smash just does so much more damage than waiting for like empowered blackout kicks or for chi burst. When you're playing with double arms warrior, while I am playing with a rogue who has tricks, it's just so much damage sometimes that sometimes when like mobs spawn or come into a pull late, it's really difficult to get threat. And this is like a great example of a dungeon that does that, like the hobo goblins dropping stuff. It's kind of annoying. Anyways, here I'm going to be running in. I'm going to be grabbing one Hobgoblin and one pack, and then I'm going to be transcending back to my rogue, and we're going to be pulling this back into the hallway. It's just safer to do it in the hallway, in my opinion. It doesn't waste too much time. It gets all of the casts synced, so you can commit like a leg sweep, a shockwave, a roar to kind of keep everything locked down for a little bit of time. You want to make sure you're kicking the free samples, but it allows all the mobs to come back here, and then you don't run the risk of someone sending the Hobgoblin into another pack. Now, of course, you want to communicate this with your group if you are doing this in a pug. Let them know you are pulling back, because what I've seen before is you go in and you pull a pack, everyone follows you in, you come back outside, and the rest of your group starts ripping threat, and then they die, and then they get mad at you, and then they leave. So don't do that. And I just find it safer to pull back if it doesn't cost you more than like 2 or 3 seconds. I think pulling back, if it's going to be safer, is always the play. And yeah, that's it. Like, there's not much really to talk about. These testers just kind of throw free samples and they do their spill drink cast, which is not super great. Spill drink is a enrage, and free samples just does some like random kind of damage to your group. Anyways, we are going to run with these brew drops. They are going to cause a little bit of like area denial, but it's not enough to warrant us not chaining it. Plus, we get some free damage and cleave and all that fun stuff. And now this time, what we're going to be doing is we're trying to send the Hobgoblin into this corner of the room every single time, because of course we don't want him. They won't stop running until they hit a wall. So if you accidentally point them at another pack, what's going to happen is they're going to run through the pack and they're going to social pull, and that can cause a lot of issues for your group. And that's pretty much it. So I committed Fortifying Brew here. I think that was a full Fortifying Brew that I used. I don't think that was a back-to-back proc. At this point in the dungeon, the pulls become a little bit more tame for the Brewmaster, like in this room specifically. So I don't think you necessarily need to use defensives, but I like to keep them on cooldown and rolling when I can. All right, Brew Droplet spawn. So now we are chaining. We're going to be pulling all 3 scientists together. Now there is a small issue with doing this pull that I found. While a lot of the drops are just like kind of fodder damage, when you have 3 scientists, that means that there's going to be 3 like exploding batches or whatever, explosive batch. And if you need to kill these, because if you can't kill them quickly enough, it's going to be a wipe. A pretty deadly wipe. So you want to make sure you're able to actually kill those. So if you're playing with like a bunch of casters, you can actually split this pull up into 2. You can grab 2 of the scientist pack, and then you pull the last scientist in with a different group, which you'll see in a second. I'll kind of point it out when we get there. But being able to kill all 3 patches, the only reason we're able to do this is because we're playing like an actual Zug comp. It's very easy for 3 of our 4 melee DPS, I'm counting myself as a DPS here, to just swap. Our warrior ideally likes to have a target that he funnels into for frenzy stacks. But you would just pull one of the flavor scientists into this pack, and then you're doing 2 and 2 on the batches, which is a little bit more manageable. All right, and that's it. So big things to look out for. Free samples, boiling flames. These are important kicks. Aim charges into the wall. But now the reason we're doing this corner pack randomly before pulling boss is, well, because there's boss spawning RP. And so we don't really want to waste time like waiting for the boss to spawn if our healer's good on mana. Now, I did chain this pull. There was 1 tester left. He's just making his way in slowly but surely. This is so our arms warrior can get a good bit of haste going into this boss. We are also going to commit drums here in a second. And the reason I'm pulling them to the corner is you can see that 2 of the drops kind of spawn stacked up. Now the caveat with this is that the tank needs to be already moving before the boss even finishes their kind of like channel. Because if the boss is still for even just a second there, he absorbs the droplets, and the droplets will basically wipe your group at this level. So you never want that to happen. I'm also trying to keep the boss close to the adds without them touching, because we want to passively cleave them down with our comp. Our comp is allowed to hit the boss, and they can cleave a lot of things around their character, especially like things like the Fury Warrior and the Outlaw Rogue. So it's easier for us just to tank the boss near the adds. Now, I don't recommend doing this for everyone. This takes very specific boss positioning and timings. But if your group is comfortable, it's definitely something you want to try to milk out. And I'm sure when we end up watching like the MDI, groups are going to do this. So I'm going to try to keep them nice and close, and I can do that by using Ring of Peace. Now I'm going to get launched here, but I'm going to port immediately to my rogue, and then I'm going to drop Ring of Peace and keep the boss nice and close like this. But as you can see, once the drops die, they do spawn that giant pool, so we have to be a little careful. Now we do have an Enrage Bomb coming in. I'm going to just Touch of Death it, and the benefit of doing that is that now I have a 5% damage gain for the next 30 seconds on boss. So Touch of Deathing one of these adds is always worthwhile as a Brewmaster monk if you're playing Fatal Touch, which most Brewmasters do, so you should be playing it. But that Touch of Death damage is going to help us push the boss down a little bit further. Also notice my boss positioning here. The adds spawn to the front, the back left, and back right of the boss. So by having smart positioning here, I can create gaps and like little windows for me to be able to move through. And now I'm going a little bit further here because the adds were a little bit more like kind of spread out, I guess, but now I'm going to be moving them back close. I have Ring of Peace. You can see me kind of using it there, but our DPS were uncharacteristically ethical there. Normally they love tunneling boss and not hitting adds, but like you can see our rogue and our warrior back there are just focusing the add down for some reason. Very weird. Very weird they're being ethical. Anyway, sub 15% means we're going to be able to tunnel after this last spouting stout. So I'm going to create a gap going to the exit of the room that we can just run to, and we're going to ignore the adds. Outside of like the ones that are coming in here, I'm going to actually, do I commit Ring of Peace? I can't remember if I use Ring of Peace here. I do. So I use Ring of Peace to create a gap. We also get a good blind there. Things like Master Root, Earth Grab Totem, those types of things are really good. Landslide. But we're going to just, I teleport the knockback by using Transcendence, the Spirit Link. And now we're going to the next place. So going in here with 17.5 minutes is really, really good pacing. This gives us about 3 minutes on the timer left over if we're clean. Big first hallway pull here. I'm watching the Purveyor. The Purveyor does a thing called Honey Volley. This is a slow that will make the Beeswax cast from the Honey Harvester very, very deadly for your group. And then our other DPS are just watching the Bee Wrangler. They're not going to have a too hard of a time with that. Now, you do want to be very careful of the bees in this pull as a tank. Whenever you see this defensive pop up on my screen, it's because they're casting their final sting. Their final sting is like a coup de grace. They're just trying to go out with a bang. And that bang is a giant tank buster on the tank. So using defensives at the end of the pull is actually, like, it's very weird, but sometimes you have to do it here. Gonna kick Purveyor. And now we're just letting this pull kind of die down because our next pull is also going to be just as big and just as lethal. You never want to pull more than one Harvester at a time if you can help it. And you never really want to pull more than one Purveyor at a time unless your group is extremely coordinated. So I'm going to knock the Wrangler in. The Harvester is going to make our way to its, holy cow, I can't talk. Make its way in eventually. I kick Honey Volley. I don't know what killed our warrior there. I think he actually died to threat because we had some bees coming in late that I didn't get threat on because I was a little busy being a tank and being bad. But he's going to be able to make his way back pretty quickly here. And that's pretty much it. So not too complicated of a pull. Our warrior comes back and almost just gets taken up by the Beezuka. That's so funny. And then we're just dodging swirls. So this pull, you're basically doing 3 big pulls in this hallway to get this down. Now, I've seen tanks do this bigger. I've seen tanks do it smaller. I think if you can get it done in 3 pulls, that's really good. I've seen tanks do it in 2. And while impressive, it's very scary, and I think it requires a little bit more group coordination, which not all groups will have and not all pugs will have. So once we get the Purveyor in, we are watching kick on it, but what I'm going to do here is once I have enough damage kind of pooled, I'm going to run into the next room, port back, and now all the bees are going to funnel into me, so I'm able to get a chi burst through the doorway to get good snap threat there into an exploding keg. And so this allows me to get really good snap threat so we don't have an incident like Easy Knees dying earlier to bees coming in later in the pull. Because like I was talking about earlier, Keg Smash, especially with that our old 4 set, has a little less impact than it used to. And while we do have more item level, so do all our DPS, so threat's kind of just weird. The last thing we're looking out here is Final Sting. Again, it's a nice big hit of damage. I'm able to counter it with some, like, obviously dodges as well as some defensives, but now we are just waiting for the Wrangler to be a little bit closer. I'm marking 1 Purveyor. I don't want 2 Purveyors in this pull, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to CC out the 1 and pull in the bees that are attached to this pack. This is the pack you would skip, though. This X-marked Purveyor, you would just do this 4-pack, and then you would jump down into the boss arena, and you'd get ready to, yeah, do the boss. But in this case, we are just doing 1 caster, and we need the pull for percent, so we're going to pull this Purveyor down into the next pull instead. Bazookas, all you have to do is spread. I recommend the Bazooka player don't move, and then everyone else move around it. But you can also like put down a marker, and people can move to the marker instead or near the marker, so you always have like a safe area or a non-safe area. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to start this. Since he was in combat long enough, he's going to start with the Honey Volley immediately, so I'm able to get a quick kick. I'm going to then CC out the other Purveyor so it doesn't get pulled, because I only ever want 1 Purveyor at a time, and this just makes kicks a little bit easier to manage. Now, don't get me wrong, we definitely could play a triple kick pull. We have 5 melee kicks, but I like to try to keep it safe. Now, I sent a Chi Burst at this like little B pack, but it just for some reason never got pulled with Chi Burst, so I ended up having to kind of like pull it more manually. And then I missed the kick on X because I realized that I set focus the wrong target. So yeah, very cool. So luckily, all of us were able to remove the slow from the Honey Volley, but it was still kind of lethal, lethal potential. And then once this Purveyor goes down, I'm able to pull in the next Purveyor to, you know, start kicking. And now what we're going to do is a pretty ballsy move, but I think it's also fine to do if you're comfortable, because I don't think this boss is necessarily difficult. We are going to chain this with the boss. And so now we have 1 melee kick that needs to be hit on the Purveyor, and then we have the boss doing like marinade and spawning ads and stuff. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be rolling out whenever I have this marinade on me, then I run back in and get threat on the ads. Now, threat control in this fight is a little weird. There's a couple of overlaps where tanks are going to struggle with threat. So I recommend everyone try to stay in melee range. If you're a caster happening to watch this video or you play with caster friends, let them know that they need to stay in melee. It's going to make their lives and your life so much easier. Anyways, I'm going to then get a nice keg smash on these beelets that are coming in. Basically, we're using the boss and these beelets around the room as just like additional funnel and additional damage for our group. So I'm going to roll out once again and then try to come back in and get threat. Threat's always going to be weird on this fight. When the tank has to run out for marinade, it creates this kind of weird spot where you have this, you don't get threat. I accidentally clicked on a B there. I was a little confused. That's why you saw me doing weird stuff. Try to keep the boss as well near the barrels. When you do this, that means you're kind of guaranteed threat on the closest one, which should make picking up threat on the other 2 very easy. And that's pretty much it. This fight is really tame. This is probably the easiest fight in here. There's a little bit of a healer check. And of course, there's like this weird gimmicky mechanic of like having to send the barrels or the bees through the barrels. But honestly, if you can control the barrels on this fight and keep it always at 3, I don't know. This boss is like definitely one where you can like continuously pull trash onto it, which makes it really easy. Like it really frees up the timer in here. My one complaint with this dungeon is that the timer is extremely tight for how linear the dungeon is. You kind of have to pull more than you need to in most compositions or the average composition. And so then at like any death, like at low damage, like all of this like will kind of have this like domino effect where you'll fail the key, even if you play well because you have low damage, or even if you don't play well and have high damage, like you're going to fail. Like you have to play this super clean. And I have this little weak aura on my screen. If you're wondering what that progression bar is, I just made a quick little weak aura to show me, or basically the white line is telling me when I need to roll out. You'll see it here. That white line is when I need to be out. And then I dash back in once it obviously falls off when the bar goes away. And that's it. So we're going into the last boss room with 8 minutes. You can see me not taking a B here. That's because I am currently doing some cool tech. This doesn't do anything, actually, for me. I'm able to transcend to my rogue and then pull, because he took the B first, and so it would be quicker for me to transcend to him than it would be for me to take my own B and then get there after him. So what we're doing in this poll and what we're attempting to do, and it unfortunately didn't work, but it has worked in previous runs. You can kill 2 of these guys at the same time if you're very, very coordinated with it. What we're trying to do is we're trying to cleave 2 of them down extremely evenly so we can do one final blow on 2 of them to keep them from healing to full or killing them at the same time. Now, unfortunately, we only did 1, but if you noticed, he didn't go back to full health. He only went to 50%. Arms Warriors have this cool little thing called Mortal Strike, which prevents mobs from healing by 50%. And so when he's able to keep it applied to 2 targets or 4 targets, when they die, instead of healing for 100% of their health, they only heal for 50%. Now, if they're at 50% health and they get healed for 50, they're going to go back to full. But if they're both at like 1%, it really speeds up this area. So you're going to see here, Skull is only going to go back to like 70% health here instead of all the way up to 100. And that's because of good Mortal Strike executions on these mobs. So this definitely sped up this area. We would have been a lot slower without the Arms Warrior in here. If you can play a Arms Warrior in this dungeon, I think it's very, very good. We tried doing this with the Hunter's MS pet, but it didn't work. Or maybe he just didn't do it right. We didn't actually look too closely, but it just didn't work. And then we're going to the last boss with 6 minutes remaining. Now, this boss doesn't take long. It's also a fairly tame fight. The way that we like to do this is we go 2-2-1 or 2-1-1. And what that means is I'm going to break 2 barrels, and I'm going to break 1 barrel, and then I'm going to break 1 barrel, and then we're going to go into intermission. The way that I like to do this is I like to get knocked back in one direction, attempting to clip 2 of the barrels. And then that happens once every minute. So I'm able to port to CL, who I have my Transcendence on, and counter the knockback. The second time I'm going to roll to counter the knock, and we're going to move away from the barrels at a diagonal angle so we don't have to worry about waves. My melee don't have to break barrels at all. You can break small barrels if you really want to keep the room clean. But, I almost killed our group there. The thing is, the barrels are going to blow up anyways, and the small barrels blowing up don't do anything to your group. They just force you to dodge waves. So all you have to do is dodge waves. I don't end up doing that here, though. So if you want to clear small barrels during the intermission, if you're a non-tank player, you can. Or not intermission, during phase 1. But you don't have to. There's no reason to. If you're looking for like just pure boss damage. Like our melee are able to just stay on boss and it's perfectly fine. So here we go again. I am facing it at the kind of like the blue marker now to make sure I can destroy this one. And then our final one is going to go to the kind of front of the room, or I guess where the vault is. It's going to be nice and chill. We're just watching waves. Melee are just, again, they're staying in melee. They can clip each other. Warriors can also spell reflect the damage so it doesn't do anything. And boom. Yep. I don't know what else to talk about on this fight. It's very tame. Let It Hail does do physical damage if I'm not mistaken. So our comp is also extremely tanky here. We're just watching a couple of these closer barrels I'm pinging just to be like, hey, just keep an eye out for this one. Now we have to do one more phase, but we are only 2 minutes into the fight. So this is not a long encounter at all. Once again, we're pulling her to the kind of the center, and then I'm facing her at 2 of the barrels. Right as I get knocked back, we're going to transcend to CL and move diagonally. And that's it. Very, very chill fight. Yeah, I don't really know what else to talk about. This fight does like almost nothing to a tank unless you get hit by a wave like that. And yeah, there's a benchmark where you can technically tunnel and not destroy any barrels at all. Unfortunately, we had like a weird timing here where she would have died. Like, we could have tunneled, but she would have probably been at 3%, and then we could have risked wiping with a 4-stack. But it ended up being absolutely fine. So we finished that key with 3 minutes and 10 seconds left on the board with 2 deaths. So almost 4 minutes, I guess, if we were clean with it. So yeah, really good run. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions down below. I hope you guys learned something, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.